What's up, everybody? Joe Ringen here. Come to you today with another book. Not a book review, a book discussion. I'm not reviewing this book today, just like with my last video. I'm not doing a review. Didn't do a score or a review of that either. So I'm just here to talk about a really good book. And I'll explain a little, again, why I'm not giving this a score or calling this a review necessarily a little later on in the video. But first, before I get too far, I just want to let you know, if you're like me and you like books, I have a book for you. A book I actually wrote. It's called The Ballad of Ages, Tale of Epic Fantasy. Check it out on Amazon. It's a quick read. If you like fun, goofy, cheesy, but also somewhat serious fantasy, check it out. But today, I'm going to talk about a book that's much better. And, well, it's not, it's, well, okay. So, if you watched my last video, I got the history of Middle Earth, which is the history of, well, I got the books 6, so it's like a 12-book series, but I got like 6 through 10. And last week was maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Oh my goodness, Return of Shadow, which is the first part of the history of the Lord of the Rings. So the history of Middle Earth has a lot of lore and a lot of books. But the ones I got for Christmas from my wife are the history of the Lord of the Rings, because I know a lot more about Lord of the Rings than I do the other parts of Middle Earth or the Lord of the Rings lore. So I wanted to start with something that I was pretty familiar with. And so, yeah, book 6 was the one I did last time. And I already have a video of it. That one's called Return of the Shadow. But today, I'm going to talk about this book that I just finished called The Treason of Isengard. This is book 7 of the history of Middle Earth and book 2 of the history of the Lord of the Rings. So make sense of that, if you will. But again, this set is cool because it talks about the history of the trilogy, Lord of the Rings. And what I found out last time, it's not necessarily the history of the lore of it. I mean, it has that in it, but it's more the history of the writing of the books, which to me is fascinating. We get a front row seat into the mind of J.R.R. Tolkien, and that is so awesome. As a fan of fantasy, as someone who loves reading fantasy and sci-fi, and also an aspiring writer, I learned so much about how to be a good writer from this book and the one before it, because we get a front row seat into J.R.R. Tolkien's head. And you get to kind of see how he weaves his plot lines together, his thoughts, how he struggles with what to do next, his characters, and it's so good, man. So if you like interested in writing, or of course Lord of the Rings, check these books out. I really recommend it. So and that's why I'm not giving this a score. Like, I'm not reviewing it because it's not like a narrative story, right? It's kind of like a history textbook. It's behind the scenes, so it'd be weird to give it a score along with like other books that I score. So it's a totally different type of thing. So I'll just say it's great and read it. That's the score. You can benefit and learn a lot from this, even if you're not a fan of fantasy at all. So in the first one, Return of Shadow, this takes us up until the Council of Elrond in the Fellowship of the Ring. Oh, actually, no, to the Mines of Moria. So just right into the Mines of Moria. So that's where we leave off with this one. Treason of Isengard takes us from, it actually does go back a little bit into Council of Elrond and then through up until actually the departure of Boromir. So, which, if you remember, in the books, that happens in Two Towers. So we get a little bit into Two Towers. Not much, though. There's like barely much. So my goal with reading these two, I was going to take a break because these are kind of dense, man. They're kind of chunky. And like, I don't know if you can see the words. And it's very interesting, but it's kind of dense, right? Like, it's kind of like a history book. So reading one was a lot, and reading two back to back was a lot. But it's totally worth it. But the reason I did that, my goal was last Friday was the 25th anniversary re-release in movie theaters of The Fellowship of the Ring. So me and my buddy went to see that movie on Friday night, and I wanted to finish both of these before I went and saw the movie, because then I could maybe, just supplement my love of Lord of the Rings. And it's kind of fun to read and sort of refamiliarize myself with it, and then see one of the greatest movies of all time again in theaters, which, what a cool experience. It was right back to being a kid again. Like, I love it because, I watched Lord of the Rings at home many times, right? On Blu-ray and streaming. But the thing is, like, when you're at home, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes my mind wanders. I start scrolling on my phone while I'm sitting on the couch. I'm not really paying attention. And it's kind of like, what a bummer. You sort of do it without realizing it. I do, at least. And so in the movie theater, that doesn't happen though, because you're just like super focused and because you're like in it. So it was really cool. That was a fun experience. So these two, I got caught up all the way through Fellowship of the Ring, and it was cool. Oh, I do want to say I got the cool popcorn bucket from the movie. I don't know. I think it's cool. Hopefully you guys do too. So what was good about the Treason of Isengard? Again, this really isn't much Two Towers. It's the second part of Lord of the Rings. Well, it's a much more interesting part of the story to me. So the content was more interesting than the first part. The first book was really cool because you see the beginning, like how J.R. Tolkien sort of comes up with the idea of Lord of the Rings and sort of fleshes it all out. But there's only so many times you can reread the Bilbo's birthday party chapter, right? It's kind of like, okay, yeah, there's some differences and it's interesting, but it's like, all right, let's go on. But the second part was, Moria, Lorien, the river, Anduin, the battle at the end. So it's very interesting. It's presented the exact same way. So there's notes in each chapter. You can kind of flip back and forth and see a little bit more into it. Again, kind of like a history textbook or like a research paper kind of thing. This one, the thing I love the most about this one that wasn't in the first part was there's a chapter dedicated to the maps. So Lord of the Rings is known and beloved for the awesome maps that it has. And I think it has inspired most fantasy books to have cool maps. That, I think, came directly from Lord of the Rings, because there's some fantasy stories out there before Lord of the Rings. I'm trying to think of them all, but I don't think of them of having maps. But we all know, like, Lord of the Rings has some sweet maps. I got a small camera here. And that chapter was really good because it talked about the creation of the maps, kind of the different versions, because J.R. Tolkien, man, he's like super detailed. Like he goes over chapters and redoes them because he needs to make sure, okay, when I say it takes him 4 days to travel from point A to point B, is that true? Like, how many miles is it? And he like calculates it, and then he got to update his maps to make sure it all matches. And he's so detail oriented, and that's why this is such a great story and trilogy. But it's interesting to see how that all came to be. So that was one of the best parts of this book. I think a lot of people will love that. I know I certainly did. One thing that is so cool about these books is, again, it shows the different plot lines, how J.R. Tolkien, he has an idea of how the story will go, but then later he comes back and changes it. But through his manuscripts and letters to different people, Christopher Tolkien, his son, who compiled these histories, he shows the different versions of each chapter, like and where it could go. Like maybe this was J.R. Tolkien's first idea for the plot, but then he redoes it and changes it this way. So like there's a few in here that are really interesting that obviously the end result of the Lord of the Rings is the best version. I think that's got to be true. But there's some interesting ideas that maybe if it went this direction, it would have been pretty cool. Like one version was Boromir doesn't die. At least, right away. One version is he does like totally turn evil, falls to the temptation of the ring. He doesn't get it, but he leaves the Fellowship still, and he goes to Gondor, and he sort of strikes up an army and goes to fight the Fellowship. So he's kind of like a bad guy, and so there's that aspect. The other one is he sort of joins forces with Saruman, and that would have been really interesting if Boromir would have went to Saruman, because remember Boromir, he's coming from a good place, like he wants to defeat Sauron, and he wants to eradicate evil, but he's going about it the wrong way. He thinks, again, they should wield the Ring of Power. They should use it to defeat evil. But wisdom tells over and over, you cannot use the Ring of Power. It will overcome you. Your best intentions will turn evil, and it'll be terrible. But Boromir just can't see that. And so, in the final version of Lord of the Rings, it's a beautiful ending for him, because he falls to the temptation, but then he realizes and repents of it, and then fights, and does end up dying, but he's like redeemed at the end, right? But some different plot arcs that J.R. Tolkien lays out in the early versions, he could have had a different part of the story, and that would have been very interesting. So yeah, there's some differences. It's very similar in structure to the first one. I still recommend reading it. I'm not going to read the next one right away, which is The War of the Ring. I'm still going to, of course, because these are so fascinating, and I'm learning so much about Lord of the Rings and about just writing. So I'm absolutely going to read those, but I need a little break, man. Like these are dense stuff. Sometimes I just got to put some popcorn fantasy in my brain and just let it sort of de-stress. But these are wonderful, and I recommend them to everybody. So, Treason of Isengard, Part 2 of the History of Lord of the Rings, Book 6 in the total history of Middle-earth. And once I finish these, I'm sure I'm going to go and get some other ones within the whole set of the history of Middle-earth, because it looks like there's some really cool ones. Obviously, like Silmarillion's in there, and I got to read that one. Like, man, I tried reading that one time, and like, I was a lot younger, so maybe it was just that time in my life when I'm like, this is mess. Like, this is crazy. I don't want to read this, because that, it really is like interesting. But from what I remember, it's like reading the Old Testament, but while doing shrooms, like, which that would be wild. So I'm not gonna. I mean, I do want to get into that again. I like to think I've matured in my reading, so I should be able to handle it now. But one day I'll get to it. But then there's some other cool stuff, just like the Unfinished Tales. So I've gotten kind of nerdy about Lord of the Rings again, which is cool. So I've watched some YouTube stuff, and like, yeah, Unfinished Tales looks cool, and then of course there's the other books like, oh gosh, Fall of Numenor, and just some of the other tales. I'm gonna get into them, but not yet. I need a little break, and just read some fun fantasy for a little bit, and sci-fi, and then I'll be back. So more reviews to come. I already almost have another one ready, but yeah, you guys all take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay warm. It's cold here in Minnesota. So until next time, have a great rest of your day.